Hello, everybody, and welcome to the second part of our MCAT channel, Cars Critical Reading, episode number 2. We will be going over a history passage. So if you were with us for the first session, hello again, and thank you for joining us for the second. If you weren't, my name is Ed. I am a Kaplan MCAT instructor, as you probably were able to deduce for yourself. I'm a second-year med student at Rutgers, New Jersey Medical School, and not only do you have me to help you through tonight's episode, we also have Paul, Rohini, and Sergey in the background. We have our main chat right here. We have the QA over there. I'm sure you're all familiar with this format by this point. So what do you say we get started with our second episode for Cars Critical Thinking? Give me a little thumbs up, number 6. Let me know you're ready to go. Harpreet, before we get started, just to answer that question, the DO school for New Jersey is actually now Rowan University. It used to be UMDNJ, right? It used to be UMDNJ, New Jersey Medical School. Rutgers now has the Robert Wood Johnson campus in Piscataway or New Brunswick, and they also have the Newark campus, which is where I go, which is an MD program, and the DO school is now part of Rowan University, which I believe is in like Camden, right by Philadelphia. So, all right, let's get going. We will be analyzing this CARS passage again with the relation, author, and logic keywords. We're going to be creating our outline. And again, remind me in the main chat, what is the 4-step process for reading CARS passages? No, not the one for answering questions. Emma's got it. Scan, read, label, and reflect. Again, it's scan, read, label, and reflect. We do for every CARS passage and paragraph, right? So we're going to be focusing on that. So let's get started with this first passage. Again, I am going to read the first couple paragraphs to get us started, and then I'll be handing the reins over to you, and then eliciting some things and just reviewing them, and that way we will get a lot of practice in this critical reading skill set that we're trying to develop here for the MCAT. So, paragraph 1. In his relentless pursuit to conquer all lands to the, quote, ends of the world and the great outer sea, unquote, Alexander III of Macedon, a.k.a. Alexander the Great, spent the majority of his entire reign in military campaigns. So, who are we talking about here? What do we know? What's the topic? Our topic here is Alexander the Great, exactly. That's so we know that right off the bat. So that's our topic. All right. So having eliminated any possible rivals to his power, and after subduing the restless Greeks, Illyrians, and Thracians previously conquered by his father Philip II, Alexander almost immediately turns attention to the conquest of the Persian Empire, which he characterized as liberation. All right, so something to focus in on is that this quotation tells us that it's a little bit of contrast. This is not the author's opinion of what happened, but whose opinion about this conquest of the Persian Empire. Exactly. This is giving us Alexander the Great's opinion of the conquest. So that's why we have the quotation marks. In 334 BCE, just 2 years after his accession to the throne, he led over 54,000 army and cavalry troops, as well as 38,000 sailors manning 180 ships across the Hellespont, defeated the combined Persian and Greek army at the Battle of Granicus, and signaled his intent to conquer his way across the Persian Empire by hurling a spear into the soil and accepting Asia as a gift to him from the gods. It's a lot there. Wow. It's a mouthful. More practically, This goal would be realized by the strength of the Macedonian army in a revolutionary approach to victory. In a revolutionary approach to victory. What goes off in your head when you read this line? It's positive, sure. I won't disagree with anybody saying it's positive, that it signifies tone, but what does a revolutionary approach mean? Is it exactly? It's a new approach. Exactly. Perfect. So in this revolutionary approach to victory, new info ahead, it is said that he mourned for all who had fallen, Macedonian or Persian, and treated their memory and survivors with respect. So this idea of mourning those who had fallen, both foe and friend, and treating all of their memories, survivors included, with respect, was something new. So that's something we definitely want to key in on here. This humane but not to be understated politically astute move provoked in the conquered people a certain restraint, reducing their impetus to rebel against their new masters. So, what do we think is a good label for this first paragraph? I recognize that most of us were here for the first episode, so I have confidence in your abilities to come up with a label before I move on and show you our example of what we would call an ideal label, or McDot, Maria, Emma, Lydia. I like all those. I like it all. I think definitely keying in on this like humane type of approach, but definitely focusing on conquering for sure. So this is what we have here. Paragraph 1 is Alexander, goals, the Battle of Granicus, respect for people. Now, I think it's good for this kind of passage. Now, you can tell probably from this first paragraph, there's a lot of dates, there's a lot of numbers, there's a lot of what in general. A lot of what? A lot of detail. Exactly. Do we want to try and remember this detail? No. No way, Emily says, and I agree. 110%. No way. It's good in a passage like this to maybe include a tiny bit of detail in case we get a question like this Battle of Granicus here. Just so that, well, you tell me, why do I say it may be good to just include some piece of detail like the Battle of Granicus in our outline? Why do you think that's a smart idea with what is probably going to be a very detail-laden passage? Asma, is that how I pronounce your name? Is that correct? Asma? Well, you can tell me in the QA how to do it better. But you are correct, but so we can find it easily if we are asked a question, right? So that's why we would definitely want to do that in this instance here. All right, so on to the second paragraph. 1 year later. All right, so we get this 1 year later. What now? What goes off in your head? What goes off in your mind? We just got all this info, all these dates, this specific battle. Now we're getting 1 year later. What are we anticipating as far as the general structure of this passage? Tadell, I like it. Do we agree? Give me a little thumbs up if we agree. Yeah, Lydia, it follows. Give me a thumbs up. Yeah, right? We're going in order here. We're going to get the chronicles of Alexander the Great, it seems. All right, cool. So now we have that. Tells us we're on a timeline. 1 year later, Alexander's army encountered the great Persian king Darius III in the Syrian city of Issus. I hope I'm pronouncing these words correctly. It's been a while since I've taken a history class. History records that prior to the battle, Alexander rallied his troops with inspirational words, calling them liberators and bearers of great values, and especially to the Illyrian and Thracian mercenaries, conjuring up visions of gold. So we get some detail here into his tactics. Though the Persian army outnumbered the Macedonian, Alexander's tactic of punching a hole in the Persian lines, then leading a direct attack, resulted in victory. Darius fled, leaving his family behind. As before, Alexander treated them with respect due to members of a royal family. The victory at Issus marked the beginning of the dissolution of Persian power, a progression which Alexander aided in his further battles. So again, we have this idea of respect and this progression going into farther battles, the inspirational words. These are describing Alexander. So these are things we want to keep in mind. We're getting a picture painted by the author about this person. Right? Now, something we should talk about before we go on to the next paragraph, and I'm going to let you all work on it on your own and then discuss it like we did earlier. I want you to tell me, in your opinion, right down here, of course, what do you think? Do you have a good idea about the author's opinions on Alexander the Great? Ooh, Emily, I like that. Now, I definitely will say that they are not negative. There's nothing negative here. And Emma, I really like what you wrote too. Not strong, but seem positive. What, who else said it? They seem positive, Emily said. They are definitely more on the positive side of the spectrum. We're not getting this completely bland, neutral thing. However, it's more about history's recollection of Alexander the Great and more of a description as far as how he's viewed in history. Not this overarching praise of Alexander the Great. And it might be a little bit difficult at first to recognize that. That's why I just wanted to bring it up. And I'm glad to see that we can see that some of us were like, it seems positive, but not too strong. So we're getting a lot of facts, and that's another key. We're getting a lot of facts and a lot of dates and a lot of examples, which is really giving us an idea of that we're getting a description from a historical point of view by the author of Alexander the Great. All right, so let's put a label for this, and I'd say Fighting Darius. What else would you put? What would your label be? I think Fighting Darius might be a little too bare bones for this one. Remember, like I said, for something so detail-laden, we might want to include something else. So McDot says Isis, strategy, more victories. I like Victoria. Alex, continue respect, further battles, motivation, decreasing the Persian army. I like that. Emma, if you put Alex victory, including this fighting in addition to fighting Darius, I think that's really good too. Excellent. All right, good stuff. I like it. I like it a lot. All right. So let's put a minute and a half up on the timer. You guys read the paragraph, look for some keywords and phrases, and come up with the label, and then we will come back and discuss it together. Okay, that is time. All right, you tell me now, what did you tease out from here? We don't need to talk about a label necessarily yet, but what did we point out? What jumped out at you when you were reading this paragraph? Not a surprising, yeah, for sure. Next, yeah, exactly right. That timeline, but, right? Yeah, but is a contrast, so for sure, not only, I like it, yeah, so next, continuation of the timeline like we expected, rejects this offer from Darius, right? So this is something that we might want to note of, example of his ambition, right? Definitely something here. He rejects an offer. He's not content with just a little bit. He wants it all. So this gives us insight into the person. And then we have this inexorable, destined to rule. Again, more description. He's confident. All right, so what is our label? Yeah, conquering more lands, exactly. What's our label? So McDot says, Tyre and Gaza take time. Alex wins Egypt, wants all Asia, now officially divine. Pretty good, I like it. Emma, excellent. Emily, excellent. Excellent. Victoria, excellent. Maria, I like it. Alex, divine origin. I'd add a little bit. I'd say definitely I'd include just, again, like Tyre, Tyre, Tyra. I don't know. I feel dumb. I should look these things up. I always mean to. I teach this class and I bumble through the pronunciations and I say, I'm going to look these up beforehand, and then I forget because I have so many other things in my head from med school. That's my excuse, at least. Oh, excellent work. So here we'd say Tyr, Gaza, Egypt, divinity. I would definitely add some of those things about his drive and motivation, rejecting a deal, really ambitious, something like that. Excellent work. All right, so fourth paragraph, we'll do another minute and a half and come back and do the same thing before we, of course, go to the questions. Right, that is time. Okay, so talk to me in the chat. Tell me, what did you pick out from this paragraph? McDot, I first thing, victory, piled on victory. What is the overarching theme here? Right? Just victory, 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 right? Anybody watch Entourage, Johnny Drama's victory? That basically describes Alexander the Great here for sure. Lots and lots of victories. But we did get other stuff too. He does die at a very, very young age. Um, but we get some more detail, right? Yeah, he's a hero. So victory piled on victory for sure. Just more time. We get more dates. He turned his face to India. Severely tested, but emerged victorious. And we go on. They plan to return to Persia, but Hot Summer's March is too much. So we have the contrast in there. Definitely need to key in on that. I'm sure that we all did. And then we get, through those schisms, wars, and rebellions ensued, history ennobled Alexander as a leader for the ages. So, again, let's get back to that question before we talk about a label for this paragraph. Let's think about this last sentence. This is not negative, for sure. But where do we want to focus this view of Alexander? Do we want to focus it more on the author, or do we want to focus it more on an historical, overall kind of view? History ennobled. Monica, Maria, Victoria. Yeah, excellent. Really, really, really excellent. History ennobled Alexander. So the author is definitely not negative, for sure. But the author is definitely putting the onus of this grandiose picture of Alexander the Great. I mean, he's known as Alexander the Great. I don't know that there's a textbook. Maybe in some Persian schools, their textbooks have a different point of view since he, maybe there's some textbook bias, but I think for most of us, it's Alexander the Great. It's not like the Civil War where you might hear it referred to as the War of Northern Aggression in the South or something like that. We definitely have this idea that history ennobles him as this great leader. Okay, in Turkey it's great Alexander, but at least he's still great, right? At least he's still positive for sure. But thanks for that, McDot. That's good to know. I was not aware of that. All right, so label time. Slap it on me. What's our label? Ha! Slap it on me. Slap a label on me. I didn't even realize I was doing that. Tell me, what's our label? Emily, India, Death, Legacy. I like that. It's kind of like a title like a India, Death, Legacy, Alexander the Great. Could be a biography, right? They got India, died in Susa after desert. I like that, Alyssa. Is that Alyssa from the class with Dan that I TA in the background? All right, awesome. Anybody else from my class here? I know Kayla was here earlier. But anyway, excellent, excellent work. I like all of these. Chelsea, yes, it's right. You are in my class too. Awesome. So here's our label. India, Susa, A's death. We had some other things in there I like to present through the history. Good stuff. All right, so here's our outline. What's the next step? Yes, goal. Exactly. Now, what is our goal? What was the goal? In other words, why did the author write this? Yeah, I like those. Does everybody agree with Emma and Alyssa, or do we have any naysayers out there? You guys give me a thumbs up if you agree. You were 9 if you disagree, you should throw in what you think it is. But yeah, I think we're all, as pirates would say, in accord for sure. Definitely talking about to describe Alexander the Great, his conquests and his, his compassion, his personality, his also you could say his drive, his ambition. Definitely not just compassionate. That was a big feature of what we were told in like the first paragraph and second paragraph, how Darius fled and how did he treat Darius's family who was left behind. He treated them well, right? What did he do that was what did the author say? It was a revolutionary tactic. What was that revolutionary tactic that Alexander the Great employed in his conquests? As humane, being respectful. That's right, much respect. So we have gone through, used keywords, we've practiced our labeling. You guys rocked it. You were awesome. Now we're going to move on to our third learning goal, which is to complete MCAT style questions, right? So why do we read this passage? In case you weren't with us for the first episode, why did we just do all that reading? Why did we read that passage in that way? Why did we tease out, not pay attention to detail, really focus on the big picture? Because as Lydia and Maria and Emily and Alyssa are all putting into the chat, we are answering questions to get the most points, right? Not reading for leisure, not writing a book report, not reading to give an oral presentation of some sort. We are trying to answer some questions. So let's do that. All right, so do we have our poll from before, guys, so they can poll in and answer? That would be fantastic if we had that again. But we will get started for this first one. So, first question. Awesome. Thanks. I will pull that over. I will make it so that we can fit it on the screen and not block stuff. And all right. So, consider Mark Antony's words in his eulogy for Julius Caesar. Quote, "He was my friend, faithful and just to me, yet Brutus says he was ambitious, and Brutus is an honorable man." Unquote. This is William Shakespeare, Julius Caesar. Would the author deem these words appropriate for Alexander the Great? Well, let's assess. First step is assess, right? And as Rohini's saying, yes, no, 50-50. One of my fellow MCAT instructors that I have worked with in the past during our summer programs calls these a 2x2 question. So if we know it's yes or no, we can get rid of two questions very easily. All right, so this is an apply question. We're taking this new information, this quote from Julius Caesar, from Shakespeare's Julius Caesar, and applying it to what we just read. So where do we go to research this answer? Well, kind of all throughout, right? What was the author's description? How did the author describe Alexander the Great? Was he ambitious? Can we say that this word used here in Julius Caesar by Shakespeare, ambitious? Yeah, I would say it's very, very fair. He wouldn't accept Darius, as Emily's saying. He wanted all of Asia. Monica, he was ambitious and he was respectful, for sure. So how do we feel about this, right? Author's neutral regarding Alexander. We might say a tiny bit on the positive side. There's definitely nothing negative there. Definitely gives us this description throughout history of him that is positive and great. So we think mixed traits, honorable but very ambitious. Does this match anything? Well, we're all pulling in with answer choice B, and that is 100% correct. Yes, because Alexander also displayed these attributes, and when you guys get 100% correct, I have no choice but to give you all this absolutely gigantic gold star because that is just phenomenal work on your part. So really, really well done there. All right, so number 2. Where did the poll go? Did I get rid of the poll? I don't know what happened to the poll. I hit the draw button and the poll disappeared. So if thanks, Rohini, I appreciate it. Sometimes Adobe Classroom likes to have a mind of its own, but it's okay. We'll get that up in a second. So which of the following situations is most analogous to Alexander's pursuit of victory in battle? Thank you, Rohini. His pursuit in battle. Okay, well, let's assess. This is a reasoning beyond the text question, right? This is something we have to go a little bit beyond what was simply written. We're taking something that's most analogous, right? So we have to go a little bit beyond the words that were written, but same principles. Now let's think. He was relentless. Our plan is that he was relentless and inexorable in battle. So we want the best analogy. Now, sometimes on the cars section, and specifically with these types of questions, it's the most analogous. What's the best analogy? And looking in here, remember, we're trying to look for that he was relentless and inexorable in battle. So our execution is to look for a situation that describes someone very dedicated to going after a goal. So take about 5 seconds and think what answer choice is the answer to this execution plan. Very dedicated to pursuing a goal and achieving it. And I'm going to end the poll now, and 84% of us agree that D is the match, and that is correct. A schoolgirl gathers resources and studies diligently to become valedictorian. This is the most analogous. This is the same as Alexander, how we had his description of, even though he was outnumbered, he had this strategy, and he wanted all of Asia, he wanted all of Persia, he did not want to take a deal, he had a plan, and he was going after it, right? C is tempting in that it depicts a good plan of attack, like a good strategy for achieving a goal. So it's not a bad analogy, but as Emma's saying here, A, B, and C are kind of very similar to each other. And D is definitely the best analogy that really encapsulates Alexander the Great in totem, not just in one specific way. All right, so next question. All right, so the poll is now open again. Looking at number 3, Alexander characterized his campaign as, quote, liberation in paragraph 1. It can be inferred that the author would likely classify this as, well, this is an inference question. That's our assess step. Now, our plan is what? What did we say when we read this together and we stopped and discussed this? And what did we say about this liberation? What was this liberation, right? Remember that our author is neutral. Our author did not ever say something negative. And Maria, that's right. Our execution here is that it is Alexander's opinion. So we can, anything that has an opinion that's not Alexander's, we can get rid of. So what is the best match? Our best match is, I'm going to end in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and yeah, 94% of us agree that it is indeed Alexander's self-description. All the other answer choices are really tempting because if if you see the quotes and it's liberation, you might think it's sarcasm. So you could very much say it's a misnomer. But if you can say it's a misnomer, you can kind of then say it's an attempt to conceal true motives. So you kind of and all the other ones are negative for sure, McDot. You're 100% correct, which is why we can definitely eliminate A, B, and D. And if we just think about it, C is exactly what we talked about when we read that. We stopped and said, why would he say liberation? And we agreed that the author was just saying, this is what Alexander himself said he was doing. So excellent work on that one. Really, really good job. All right, so we're on to number 4. Suppose that a 10th century emperor wanted to ensure his citizens' support. Based on information in the passage, what would be the best way to do this? So we assess that this is an apply question. All right, so apply, where do we go? We look at our outline. Remember the first couple of paragraphs, right? Alexander's raising support from his troops. Go back and look. What did Alexander do to raise support from his troops? This is where your outline is really good. Well, he showed respect to the people he conquered, for sure. But what did he do? Tidell saying, right, and Maria used inspirational words, for sure. So our execute step is using something about using inspirational words to rally support. And that would match best 2, 3, 2, 1, and 100% of us again agree that answer choice A, unite his citizens with encouraging and inspiring words, and that again gets us a big, ginormous gold star. Because if 100% of us are on board, that means that we're all doing something right. So great work on that one, everybody. All right, so number 5. Again, the poll goes away. I don't know why it does, but the poll likes to play hide and seek with us. It's okay. It's a tricksy little poll. I do my Gollum voice, but some of you might not know what that is and be really weirded out, and then some of you might know what it is and still be really weirded out. So for number 5, I'll do it at the end, Emily, okay? Just remind me. 5. For which of the following claims in the passage does the author provide the most support? So let's assess the situation here. Let's assess the situation. This is a reasoning within the text, right? We need to be in the text to assess this, right? So we kind of have to go through our answers. With this kind of question, this is our plan. Our plan now is let's look at each answer choice and evaluate it, because what else are we really going to do? We have an idea about the author. The author described Alexander the Great and, described him and his conquests and his humane nature and his strategy and his success and his death and all that, but really we need to go through. All right, so A, Egyptian citizens preferred Macedonian to Persian rule. Well, did the author talk about that? Was that mentioned somewhere? It was, right? It's why they didn't really put up much of a fight, something along those lines. Was that the most support? Was that the main idea of the whole passage? No, the passage was about whom? The passage was about Alexander the Great, so I would say that we're not going to go with A. All right, B, Alexander spent most of his reign in military pursuits. Well, he died at 33, and the whole kind of timeline was what? One conquest after another after another. I would definitely stop here. My execute thing is that I agree with B, and so do all of you, and that means that you're all getting 2 gold stars in a row, which is really, really, really fantastic. So, great job on that one. You guys are really killing it with this passage, so really good job. All right, so got number 6 and then number 7, and then we will be finito. All right, so which of the following, if true, would not weaken the author's contention that Alexander was inexorably bent on conquest? All right, so a couple of things to notice about this one. First, what do you notice when we assess this question, right? It's strength and weaken, and it's also what? Roman numerals, for sure. And as Ozma says, and Alyssa, it's a not. So something to keep in mind here is it would not weaken. Does that mean that it has to strengthen it? So we're looking for anything that would strengthen or have what? Basically, we're saying it can have a positive effect or strengthen this contention or be completely neutral. And I'll admit, when I was the first time I read this question, I'm like, okay, would not weaken. I'm going to reword it and just say would strengthen. And then I started going through the answer choices. I'm like, well, hold on. Would not weaken is not the same thing as strengthen. That could mean it just has no effect or it strengthens. So with that in mind, let's take a look. And we need to look for answers that support the idea that he's devoted to conquest, right? So I again would go with Roman numeral. Which Roman numeral are we going to go with? Remember from the last episode, we have 2 Roman numerals that are in 3 out of 4, and then we have 1 Roman numeral that's in 2 of the 4. So, yeah, Chelsea, Ozma, we're going to go with number 2 first, because it splits our answers in half. All right, so number 2, Roman numeral 2 says, Macedonia was at peace throughout Alexander's reign. Does that have any effect, positive, negative, or neutral, on the contention that he was hell-bent on conquest? His homeland is Macedonia, remember. Negative. Macedonia was his homeland. Was peace in Macedonia have anything to do with him leaving Macedonia to try and conquer other lands? No, exactly. Yeah, we need to think about this a little bit more clearly. Macedonia is his homeland. If there's peace in his homeland, does that mean anything about the author saying he was hell-bent on conquest, meaning conquering other outside lands? It does not. So Roman numeral 2 can stay. No effect on there. So Roman numeral 2 stays. We get rid of A and C. So now which one do we look towards? Which Roman numeral do we look towards now? We look at 3 for sure, right? Because if 3 is in, then it's D. If 3 is out, then it's B. So we don't need to bother looking at Roman numeral 2. Or Roman numeral 1, rather. Sorry, we just did number 2. All right, so we just did number 2. I'm a child sometimes. Anyway, 3, how long it takes. Tyr and Gaza succumbed quickly. Does that have any effect on the author's contention that Alexander the Great was hell-bent on conquering other lands? It does not really affect that, right? If they succumbed quickly, does that mean he didn't really want to do it? No, exactly. So we can say this is another neutral one. So that means our answer choice, if I end the poll, I'll give you 5 seconds to now pick the correct answer. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and the poll is ended. We got 78, 80% of us are correct in that D is correct. Because 3 is in. 3 is in. We just said Tyr and Gaza falling quickly. That does not say anything about his ambition in conquering outside lands. The passage says it's not easy to conquer Tyr and Gaza. True. But this question stem, Tadella, if you read it, it says, which of the following, if true? So it doesn't matter whether it was true in the passage or not. We're saying, if this is true, then. So we can contradict something in the passage if we want to, in this kind of question stem. Right, as McDot says, it's not about the integrity of the passage. It's giving us what could be new information, and it could contradict. So we're saying now, if this is true, how does this affect what we know? And particularly, how does this affect the author saying Alexander the Great was just crazy about conquering lands? So if the places fall quickly, who knows? Maybe that feeds his hunger more. It definitely does not tell us that it would have a negative effect. So that's why D is our correct answer choice. All right, so good job. We have one more question to go. All right, so after the Battle of Chaeronea, Alexander, making reference to those who died in battle, is quoted as saying, I do not feel happy for this victory of mine. On the contrary, I would be glad, brothers, if I had all of you standing here next to me, since we are united by the same language, the same blood, and the same visions. The author of the passage would most likely react to this quote with, well, this is an apply question. We're taking new information, we're applying it to what we read. So where do we go to research this? We talked a lot about this kind of attitude in which paragraph? What does this quote remind you of that was discussed about Alexander the Great? Yeah, tell me in the chat. What is it? Yeah, about his character, specifically what? What was... Yeah, exactly, right? So the author, we're all agreeing this reminds us of something the author discussed, right? Give me a thumbs up that this quote reminds us of something we read in the passage, right? For sure. So with that in mind, right, we know this is showing he's compassionate. This is paragraphs 1 and 2. So we're thinking what? We're thinking that it supports his idea of humanity, and just in case you didn't get your answer in there yet, to match, you get 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and awesome. We end on a super high note that it matches answer choice D, approval, because it exemplifies Alexander the Great's compassion or his humanity or his respectfulness. And we ended on a super high note. We are going to get just gold stars everywhere because you guys rocked that passage. Thank you, Emma. I really appreciate that. You guys were an excellent class. You were super participatory. Someone wanted me to do the Gollum voice. Does anybody not want me to do it? I don't want to freak anybody out. You're welcome, Fong. Emma wants me to do it. So, thank you very much for attending tonight's session. I don't know if it came through on the camera really well, through the microphone. Tricksy little habits. Well, thank you all very, very much. I also have Lord of the Rings Elvish tattooed on my arm here, so yeah, you can't really see it. There we go. Yeah, that's my dog's name in Elvish, so I'm kind of a nerd. That's probably not a surprise. I'm glad you had fun. Thank you for coming. Thank you especially to those in my class, Chelsea, Alyssa, Kayla earlier, everybody who came to support me for my channel sessions tonight. I appreciate it. And yes, Raheem says stay tuned for Enzymes. The inimitable John Linick, who's my mentor, So I learned from the best. Have a great evening, everybody. Best of luck with your MCAT prep. Remember, you can email, what's the email? Kaplan MCAT channel at kaplan.com with any questions, and of course, your um, your instructors with any questions you have. So thanks, McNutt. I appreciate it. I appreciate that very, very much. So have a great night, everybody.